on my possessions, but I'm willing to hold them much more lightly and not so tightly. And also to think about this link between do not be afraid, sell your possessions. The kingdom is with you. So how do we live fearlessly? Well, one way is by not holding on so strongly to our possessions or our positions or what we think of as power. What are each one of us really afraid of losing? I have been so dismayed about major universities, law firms, various people just throwing integrity to the wind out of fear. So what would that look like for me if somebody said, I'm going to take your house, this front porch you like to sit on every morning with your coffee, you're going to have a different place. Well, I have to be willing to say, yeah, I'm going to stand up for what I know is right, and I'm not going to be afraid that that'll be taken away. And our ultimate thing, of course, is not being afraid of death. But I'm going to leave that for a whole different sermon, or another topic, because that's its own thing. But it really is important to think about it. And even St. Paul, who mixed complicated man, but he did give up a lot. But every now and then he lists it. Oh, I was a Jew of the house of Benjamin. I was this really great Pharisee. I was that, but I gave that all up. And so it is hard as humans to let these things go because they are a bit of our identity. But if we find that we can no longer do the right thing because of these things we're afraid of losing, we have said no to Jesus's invitation to live fearlessly. And now more than ever, we are called to live fearlessly, even as our butterflies and that sit in the stomach. So, okay, and I've dealt with for the moment, fearlessly. And now we have all these wonderful examples of faith in our Old Testament reading and our reading from Hebrews. And so what does that mean to live in faith? So many people think that means to believe in something. But even here, it's all about hope, continuing to hope in something. And we talked about that some last week, but hoping is a very important thing because this life is, if nothing else, a pilgrimage filled with hope, even in face of a world that might seem hopeless. It is also about endurance. Unfortunately, it's not about an easy life. As Abraham and Sarah can tell you, they had all kinds of marital troubles and treated they treated their slave women horribly and his other son. I mean, life is still messy, even when you live with hope and faith and trust. But a really strong piece of all of this, and it's something else we need right now, is to live joyously. And it seems strange, but our faith, that core of hope, the focus that remains on God. Abram kept his focus on God's call. Enoch, who's mentioned in here, supposedly walked with God 300 years, and then he didn't have to worry about death. He was just taken up. And you think of others in their hope. And in the thing that we used to joke in my Baptist church that you wanted to, for a Bible sword drill, you wanted to sit next to the person who knew where Habakkuk was, so you could find it quickly. But Habakkuk, he also would say, life is hard. My crops are dying, things are bad, but I continue to rejoice in the Lord. And this is also true when Jesus said, I am here so your joy may be complete. There are so many scriptural and later examples of people who kept their focus on the divine light when they're within, without, in one another, in the world around us. And what they have is joy. the man who runs a thing to help gang members reintegrate into society out in Los Angeles. He doesn't have 100% success rate, but he has a pretty darn good one. And you know what? He still lives in joy. He lives in joy, even though it's not perfect. And so I just want to encourage us to do that and give you a little piece from Quaker from the 17th century, Isaac Pennington. And I spent a week at Pendle Hill reading early Quaker writings and then chanting, which seems like totally not it. So I'm just going to give you a little bit because maybe it'll stick in your mind, and we'll see where we go. Here is joy, unspeakable joy, joy that the world cannot see or touch, nor the powers of darkness come near or interrupt, and this joy is full of glory. You know what I love? The powers of darkness cannot come near that joy or interrupt it, and I want to stay in that space and have it for others. So here we are, fearlessly, joyously. And you think, woohoo, this is great. I'm going to go home. And I'm not letting you go just yet, though we're very close to the end. So a friend of mine, when I lived up in Binghamton, New York, and he worked for IBM when it was a little more heft than that. He was a manager, and he had to meet some deadline, was suddenly shifted. I'm sorry, but I just love this story. And he told his team, all right, everyone, you must gird up your loins, and we must do that. Well, the poor man, biblical reference, got in trouble. Oh, this is probably some sexual reference, not the taking your tunic and putting it in your belt so that you can really get down to hard work. So keeping in mind what that means, I'm saying we all have to gird up our loins because this does not happen. Our world, our collect asks God to help us do the right thing. That sort of looks like we have stuff to do, and we really do, and God brings us grace. And that also comes from my favorite prayer, actually, that Ted and I both memorized years ago when we were always doing Right One, but it was that God give us grace to do all the good works that you have prepared for us to walk in. And you might have heard me say that before because that is also one of my touchstone prayers, that we are called out into this world. We are called to give our lives for others, the greater good. We are called to look for that. We're called to look much farther than our personal positions in the community, whatever they may be, whatever sources of power we think we have, whatever we own. We are called at the end to simply do the right thing. And we will in many ways, God has made so many promises, but I believe it says this in this part of Hebrews, and that those folks didn't really see all the promises fulfilled, but they were a strong part working toward their fulfillment. And so we can, together in community and ourselves, go forth fearlessly and joyously and do all such good works as God has prepared for us to walk in. Standing as you are able, please join in our community saying an affirmation of faith. We are not alone. We live in God's world. We believe in God, who has created and is creating, who has come in Jesus, the Word made flesh, to reconcile and make new, who works in us and others by the Spirit.